welcome to this talk on next steps after applying. So what we're going to be looking at is basically your son, your daughter, have actually made their application. So what happens next? Do they actually sit down and do nothing, or what is the process that needs to go on between them making that application and actually starting university? Some of this you may already be aware of, some of it you may not, but all of it together is really, really useful. So little bit about us. University, we're about 100 miles away from you, something like that. We are a city centre campus based university, about 19,000 students. Students love us because we, as it says, are the third most affordable university city in the country to live in, and everybody walks everywhere. So on to the nitty gritty. What actually are we going to be looking at? We're going to be looking at what is that journey now to university, very much therefore understanding the decisions that students have to make. What is UCAS Extra? Their offer holder days and student finance, very important thing to remember. Student finance, equally, if students are moving away from home, that accommodation situation, those essential skills that they all need to get there, and when they've got there, including budgeting, what happens on results day, and then some more general tips for starting university. So the journey, basically, as it stands at the moment, students will have submitted their UCAS applications. Some of them may be looking still and awaiting interviews, and we have got a slide on interviews and what they should be considering, and yourselves. But then the decisions that are coming back from those institutions that they've applied to, do they understand them? What are those decisions that are coming in? What can they do if there's some in there that they don't quite understand? We will also look at UCAS Extra and what UCAS Extra is. Offer holder days, have they been to an offer holder day? If not, should they be going to an offer holder day? Are you aware of what offer holder days are? At some point, they will need to choose their firm and insurance choice. And also then preparing for that transition to university, that budgeting skill that they will need when they get there. What does happen on results day and clearing? And yes, they've got past that. You've dropped them off. They've made it their refresher. That's essentially what's going to happen. And don't forget, as I've already said, there is in there that student finance. You need to be aware of that student finance. And are they going to apply for accommodation? When and where do they apply, and how do they apply? Are there any things that are on there that mean that they have to wait? So we will look at this as we go. So for those students that might still be out there actually awaiting an interview, and there may be some, particularly for nursing, midwifery, paramedics, a lot of areas like that, teaching possibly. It's as much about the interview, the university finding out whether the student is potentially right, but equally, it's just as much about finding out whether the student is going to be wanting to go to that university. So there could be practice questions that they could ask for or potentially search for online. Always get the student to go in forearmed with questions of their own, because it shows to the interviewers that they've got that initiative. It's also time for them to find out more about the course in detail. But for you, particularly if you're taking them, it's that logistics bit of it. Have they sent the information that shows where you're going to park when you get there, where you need to go? So it is a two-way process, that preparing for interview, but it is an essential part for some of going to university. Eventually, they will start to get decisions coming back from those universities. Those decisions will be one of three things. They will either be a conditional offer, an unconditional offer, or a rejection. So what do these mean? Well, a conditional offer essentially is the student will need to meet certain entry requirements to secure a place on results day. Now, depending on the university that they are considering, it could be a specific set of grades, or it could be a requirement to meet UCAS points. Here at Lincoln, it is very much, we are a UCAS point university. We don't look for specific grades other than for medicine, where it is very strictly 3As or higher. Most students who get this are quite confident that hopefully they're going to meet those requirements on results day. Unconditional offers are where they've actually secured a place. Now, for most students, this would apply if they have taken a gap year, for instance, and have already got their results. So the university isn't waiting for those results are there, so they can make a decision on the fact that those results are in front of them and will make it potentially unconditional. There are still some universities out there, though, that are making unconditional offers to students who have yet to sit their exams. I'm not saying that a student shouldn't take an offer of a place like that, but what I would always recommend is those students actually complete their examinations as though they were getting conditional offers from a different university. The final one is rejection. And rejection from a university is, unfortunately, they've not been offered a place. But it's not the end of the world. The student can ring up the university in question to find out why, particularly if they've had an interview. It could be that the interview wasn't particularly strong, or it might be that their personal statement wasn't ideal for what that university was looking for. But there are some instances where a student has missed a grade of GCSEs off their application form, and that university was particularly looking for that GCSE and the grade that's required. And if that student's got it, and it's a simple case of, actually, I've got that grade, I missed out, and I've not added it to the application, you can send that to the university and it could return it and make that actually a conditional offer. So understanding their decisions is a vital part, and you understanding their decisions as well as parents and guardians is a vital part of that process coming in. So they need to keep an eye on UCAS Hub to find out what is going on. UCAS Extra is also another route into higher education. Now, UCAS Extra applies, and it's actually already open. Most people, and particularly students, are not generally aware of what UCAS Extra is, or even that it's there. Okay, and UCAS Extra is literally an extra chance for people who, unfortunately, because of the decisions they've made in the universities that they've applied to, have got 5 choices come back to them that are rejections. If, as the top tip says, though, they've not used all their original application lines on their UCAS, they must use these first before they can consider going into UCAS Extra. However, it is also there for students that change their minds. And we do get students that have applied for all sciences, but they're really good at art and have suddenly had a change of heart. And in that case, they can actually reject all their offers themselves to actually go into UCAS Extra. So there are 2 ways of approaching UCAS Extra. And it is an extra chance. It's 1 course at a time. They apply for that course, and it cannot be a course they've already been rejected from, but it could be a course at similar university, or a different university altogether because they've changed their mind. They have 21 days to hear back from that university. If after 21 days they basically haven't heard anything, they could basically reject it and go to a different university or wait until they do. But if they accept that offer becomes their automatic firm choice. Another integral part of this process now into that transition into university is universities will be offering the chance to go and visit them again. On some universities like Lincoln, we call them offer holder days. Some universities call them applicant days or course taster days. They are all similar things. What they actually give the student is the chance to try out the course. And certainly at Lincoln, if a student comes to us for an offer holder day and they come with parents, we split the student off from the parent for half the day. The parents have their own timetable with us, or they could go into the city centre and have a look around the shops, whereas the student will spend half the day in workshops allied to their course, so they actually get a more intensive understanding of what is going on and what they could be doing at that university, and more importantly, with the people that could be on the course with them. We then, certainly at Lincoln, bring them all back together again for the other half of the day, where if you've already been on an open day, you get the chance to see potentially things that you missed on an open day, or you would get a chance to have a look around accommodation that's offered. All universities will be similar, but if your son or daughter hasn't been to an offer holder day, I would strongly recommend, certainly for the ones that they feel are going to be their top two choices, that they go and see what's available. They are a vital part of making the decision of which will be the ones that I want to go to. Ultimately, though, they're going to be given a choice by UCAS of making a decision of firm and insurance. This is assuming that they've applied for more than one course. If they've only applied for one course and they get an offer for that course and they're happy with it, that automatically would become their firm choice. If there's more than one, then they would have to make a choice of firm and insurance. Now, for students, it's important to keep an eye on UCAS Hub as to the deadline set by UCAS as to when this has to happen. Now, for most students, they will have up until, I think this year, it's the 6th of June. But if they've got all their decisions back from universities much sooner than that, that decision date could be brought forwards. So it's useful to keep an eye on it as a student, and parents, for you to actually keep on top of students to make sure that they are keeping an eye on it, because if the student misses the deadline that's set by UCAS, UCAS will automatically reject all their offers by default. There will be a lot of weeping, wailing and gnashing of teeth at that point, and that's just the parents or guardians. Never mind the student. It is not the end of the world. The student can approach the two universities that were going to be firm and insurance and actually say to them, I've missed the deadline. I've been rejected by default. You are my firm choice. You are my insurance. Please, can you reinstate me? It's a lot more stress for them and you, and it's a lot more work for the universities. So keep them to get them to make sure that they keep an eye on UCAS Hub to find out what's going on. Okay, so firm and insurance. Firm choice. What is the firm choice? It is very simply the one that they really want to go to, assuming that they get the grades. The insurance choice, therefore, is their backup. And if on results day it doesn't go according to plan with their firm choice, it would then go to their insurance choice. And what I would say with this is, if at all possible, try and get them to consider their insurance choice with slightly lower grades, just as that backup default, because what you can find is that all their grade are the same for all the universities that they've applied for. So if one rejects, their insurance will likely reject as well. But if they're accepted by their insurance choice on results day, that automatically then becomes their firm choice. However, if they're accepted by their firm choice on results day, and then they subsequently want to reject it, they can self-release into clearing. A little bit complicated, but hopefully that made sense. The other important thing to consider, both for the student and yourselves, is student finance, because most students need funding to help them study while at university. Student finance is now open, and what I would say is, if your son or daughter is considering applying for student finance and they haven't already started to do so, get them to start as soon as possible. They register and complete online, and it's through the gov.uk/student finance website. They need to inform you as parents and guardians, because you will be providing information on household income. This is how they are assessed for their maintenance loan. So the tuition fee loan is not means tested. So whatever they apply for, they're guaranteed to get. But the maintenance loan is means tested. This is the bit that you will help with by providing information that is required. Student finance will also expect the student to put in a firm choice of institution. Now, I would always say to them, get them to put in that firm choice that they think they want to go to. If they end up going to a different one, it is easy to swap over, so don't panic. Student Finance England also set a deadline. The deadline is normally late May, and what they say is, if you've got all the information to them by that deadline and they're happy with it, they guarantee to have the funding in place when the student starts the university that they wish to go to. You can monitor the application and find out the progress. Certainly the student can, because it takes between 8 and 10 weeks to process the application. They apply each year, they study, and the money is then released when they enroll. The tuition fee they never see. It's paid on their behalf to the university that they go to by Student Finance England. The bit they see is the maintenance loan, the bit that helps them live either from home if they're travelling on a daily basis, or away from home while they are studying at university. There is also additional funding out there for students that you may or may not be aware of. There's a wide range of sources, including from Student Finance England itself, particularly for students who have additional needs. Now, additional needs can be anything from somebody who has severe dyslexia, for instance, and potentially needs software on a laptop or a specialist laptop or something similar, right up to students who have such physical needs that they need a 24-hour carer alongside them. Again, that process, if you are as a student applying for student finance and this application is made all at the same time, all on the same form as the previous loans are, then basically that process takes 100 days for that additional needs funding. There are others for people who are in a situation where they have children and they might be requiring childcare facilities and things like that. So it's worth having a look. The other thing that student finance provide is If the student has a course where there is an opportunity to study abroad for a year on an exchange with a partner university, and it's an integral part of their degree, Student Finance England will also allow students to apply for maintenance loan funding for that additional year whilst they're studying abroad. Every university will also offer scholarships and bursaries. Lincoln is no different, and we have a range of scholarships and bursaries to help students with their undergraduate study. So get them to just have a look at the universities they're considering. What are they offering? What can they apply for? How do they apply for it? When do they do that? All those sorts of things. Students for nursing, midwifery and other allied health courses, including paramedics, diagnostic radiography and areas like that, carrot on a stick. The government want people to go into these areas. So through the NHS Learning Support Fund, those students are entitled to currently a minimum of £5,000 a year for every year that they study on the course. The beauty about all this additional funding is that it's theirs and they don't have to repay it back, except that overseas loan if they apply for it. The other important thing that most students don't necessarily consider straight away is applying for accommodation. This is another good reason why it's useful to go on either open days or offer holder days, because parents tend to be the ones that wonder actually where they're going to live when they get to where they're going. Whereas the students are more interested in what's the course like, what's the university like, what's the student union like. You're the ones that are more important in terms of where are they actually going to live when they get there. So it's useful ways of finding out. But equally, universities should be telling students that are applying to them, particularly if they've made firm and insurance choices, because most universities will want students to be either firm or insurance with them before they can apply for their own accommodation. Equally, depending on what accommodation is available, there may be a deposit required, but normally deposits, certainly at Lincoln, aren't required to secure that accommodation until after results day. Another good way of finding out through offer holder days or open days is what are those options that are available to them. Yes, every university will have their accommodation options online, but there's no real substitute for actually going and visiting, because universities will have a variety of accommodation options. Lincoln, we are blessed with the fact that within 15 minutes walk of us, we have 8,000 purpose-built halls of resident beds available to us. 4,000 are university managed, 4,000 are private. So everything from relatively cheap non-ensuite up to studio apartments. All ours are self-catered. Some universities offer catering options as well. You need to go and have a look. They need to go and have a look. Some, though, as it says, might be competitive. So the ones that go very quickly, they may say to try and incentivize students to say, you make a firm choice and we will give you the best options available for student accommodation. It's up to students whether they take that, but personally, I would get them to look at what is available to them. If they're late in applying, generally don't panic, because most universities have enough accommodation to actually cater for all their first year students. Certainly at Lincoln, we can guarantee all first year students accommodation in university managed halls. And even if you're deciding as a student, actually, I'm going to travel on a daily basis, it's still always worth applying for accommodation because you might have a change of heart. But applying for accommodation is an essential part of all students thinking in that approach to university. The other really, really essential skill that all university students will need, whether they live at home or whether they live away from home, is budgeting. They will only have a finite pot of money to live on. If they're unsure of what they're likely to get, and even prior to applying for student finance, you can use a student finance calculator. The gov.uk student finance website has one, Student Finance England has as well, but Martin Lewis, the money saving expert, he has a really useful site about student finance, and he has a student finance calculator on his. What it's calculating is your maintenance loan as a student. And as long as you're truthful putting information in, it will give you a rough ballpark figure of what you're likely to get. Now, you can then find out which universities you're going to, what's the accommodation like, what's the cost of living like, so you can start to work out an estimated monthly or weekly spend. That rent, how much socializing, is there any clubs or societies that I want to join? All this will start to build an overall picture of actually how far my budget is going to stretch, apologies. But it's down to things like you as parents, getting them to do a food shop. Have they actually ever done a proper food shop? If not, get them to have a go before they go to university. If there is a shortfall, then what can they do? There are a variety of things that they could do. Part-time work and student ambassadors. Every university could not survive without student ambassadors. Student ambassadors help us for open days, school visits, stuffing envelopes for mail shots, all sorts of different things. And certainly all the universities that I am aware of pay their student ambassadors. We at Lincoln, our minimum pay for student ambassadors is currently £12.80 an hour, but some of those are earning as recruitment ambassadors £14 and £15 an hour. So through Freshers Week, get them to consider being a student ambassador. Equally, part-time work. Again, depending on where the university is, you may be blessed with the opportunity as a student to get lots of part-time work opportunities outside of the university environment. Equally, if you are, as a student, working for any of the large supermarkets, McDonald's, any of the other fast food restaurants and environments, B&Q, they are quite amenable to swap if there's a branch near the university that you are going to, then they're quite happy for students to transfer and work there and then transfer back. So there's lots of opportunities for students to get part-time work to potentially supplement the money that they're going to get from student finance. There are other ways of gaining money, discount cards, so Nectar points and Tesco Club card points. Once you get into accommodation as a student, particularly if it's self-catered and you're living with others, thinking about pooling resources. So rather than everybody doing their own individual shops, pool your resources. Less money being spent by one person, still the same amount of money, food and resources being bought. Student bank account. Now, most students to apply for student finance will need details of a bank account, but they can only apply for a student bank account once they have enrolled as a student, because the bank will need proof they are a student. But the banks incentivize, and I would personally always get a student bank account to keep my student money separate from my own personal money. Incentives include everything I've seen from 5-year student rail cards to computer tablets to Santander last year were giving really, really good overdraft facilities with 0% repayment. So lots of different things. Don't forget, as it says there, those scholarships and bursaries, they could be a really useful way of getting additional money from the university itself. And then there is the bank of mum and dad. Not every student has this opportunity, but if students get that opportunity, generally the bank of mum and dad is always the best bank to have, because the repayment schedule is always very, very flexible. So we're moving on. You need to have a plan. They need to have a plan for results day. Results day, the third Thursday of August. Now, option one, as it says on results day, is they've checked their results, they've met the entry requirements of their firm choice, and their firm choice will accept them. Fantastic. They're in. They do not need to do any more. They do not need to contact that university. Option two is, sadly, you don't meet the firm choice requirements. It drops to insurance, okay? And if insurance accepts them and they become their firm choice and they're happy, fantastic. Again, they don't need to do anything in terms of contacting that university. However, if they're not happy with their insurance, or they've changed their mind regarding it, or the insurance rejects them, it drops into clearing. This is where they need that plan of action, and you need to be there to support them with that plan of action to understand the process that they will go through, and we will look at that in the next couple of slides. But there will be students out there that actually on results day have done much better than they thought. Now, UCAS used to have something called adjustment, and it was for these specific students where they could actually have their place held and then apply through adjustment to universities where they didn't think that they could get in the first place because the grades were too high. UCAS did away with adjustment last year simply because you could do exactly the same thing through clearing without actually going into clearing. So you could contact universities to say, I've actually exceeded my requirement. If I went through clearing, would you consider me? There is also that group of students out there that didn't really want to go to university, but now actually I've done better than I thought. All my friends are going. I do feel it's now right for me. They would apply through clearing directly. Bear in mind as well, both you and as a student listening, that clearing doesn't finish on results day. It will carry on after that, so don't panic. So, clearing, it actually starts on the 5th of July, but for the vast majority of people, the impact is results day. You can self-release, as it says. There are two options. There is clearing and clearing plus. So if you go into clearing as a student, you have the choice of either contacting the university yourself by picking up the telephone, ringing the clearing hotline, talking to an advisor, and getting details that way, potentially to make an offer to you verbally over the phone, and then they will contact you to confirm that offer. And it doesn't have to be just one university. You can ring multiple universities, and then the decision is yours. Or you can use Clearing Plus. Now, Clearing Plus is a more automated system where it actually matches universities that have courses similar to the ones that you were applying for, and there is a button that says I am interested. You click that button for that university and it sends all your details to that university, and then they will read that information and get in touch with you. You could do a combination of both, but it's entirely up to you. I would always, again, if you're narrowing down your choices, visit the institutions before making the absolute firm choice about it. It would also give you the chance to ask the university about their accommodation. Do they have any left? If not, what are my options open to me? If there is, fantastic, how do I apply for it if I accepted you as the firm choice? As you can see, clearing closes on the 17th of October. Most students will have started university by then, so it gives plenty of scope. But what I would also say is if the student is in that situation, both them and you should stay calm and take the same rational approach that was taken in looking for the universities that you were going to go to through the traditional route as a student. Other tips before you start, as it says here, I keep saying the university, you don't need to contact them. If they become your firm choice, they will contact you. Here at Lincoln, we ring all our students on results day to congratulate them, to say, fantastic, you're in with us. This is what's going to happen next. The university will also send you a welcome pack, and that used to be posted out. It is now sent out via email. If you've applied for accommodation, the accommodation services at that university will also potentially be in touch, giving you the allocation of this is the hall that you're in, this is your room, are you happy with it? If you're happy with it, pay the deposit, and that holds that room and confirms it's yours. Reading lists. The department that you're actually going to study in may well send the student a reading list. The reading list is a list of recommended books that the student should have prior to starting the course. It does not mean that they need to read them all before they start the course. If they don't receive a reading list, then don't panic. It will be given normally in Freshers Week. Nowadays, because enrolment is online, most universities, once they've sent out the welcome pack, will have details of how to enrol, but it will also include the Freshers Week activities, what's going on, but also more importantly, the actual start date, when they want you there. If you're moving into accommodation as well as a student, accommodation services will also get in touch with them to find out and tell them when they can move into accommodation. So we've got to the point of we're actually dropping our son or daughter off. What do they need to do? What do you need to do? So what I would do is certainly encourage them to save money for Freshers Week. And we normally say for that first week, if possible, a ballpark figure is between £200 and £300, because it'd be surprising in terms of freshers fairs and clubs and societies fairs where, oh, I wouldn't mind trying that and I wouldn't mind trying that. They will all have an admin fee to join them. So it's useful to have a little bit of spare cash. That timetable for the first week, where do students need to be and at what time? That's what they will need to find out. It's also useful for you to sit down with them and just plan out where they're going to be staying, how are they going to get there, what that first week's timetable is going to be like. If you've got a university plan, how do they get from this building to that building? How do they move about? For you, as well as them, that moving into accommodation, what you will need to know is, where do I drop them off? What time do I drop them off? Where can I park once I've dropped them off? What do we need to bring? Don't try and overcomplicate things in terms of having a full set of pans and things like that. It could be and will be useful to do a shop before you come, but equally, for most students, it's also useful and a good gesture to bring things like cakes or biscuits. It just makes you more approachable, and it gets the students to actually integrate with others in their accommodation much more easily. Get them to make sure that they've got all the ID documents that they require, but also key contact numbers. make sure that you give them a list of key contacts who they need to call. All these sorts of things are really, really useful in arriving at university. So that first week is really split into three. The social aspect of it is sports and societies, freshers' fairs, settling into accommodation, keeping them busy actually outside of their academic talk time so that they don't start to feel homesick. The academic side of it is basic introductory seminars. It will be potentially getting reading lists if you've not already been sent one. Where can I get the books from? How do I go about getting my actual timetable for the following week, where we start doing it for real? All these sorts of things is what's going to happen. And then there is that extra little bit. Okay, so can I sign up for the student ambassador scheme? What about a part-time job? What else can I find out about it? It's all that first week to get them integrated into university life. As an integral part of that is student support. And the student wellbeing team here at Lincoln is an award-winning team, and we offer strong student support for any student that's out there, whether that be through academic support, through student wellbeing, through the health service, through student union, hardship funds, if they just want to talk to somebody in confidence. All these sorts of things is what student support should be there for. It's their first people to turn to in a situation at the university. That includes the student union as well. The student union and the sabbatical officers are there to support them. In terms of coming away from university, if you've been for an open day or an offer holder day and you've got questions, it's not just the traditional routes now of I've got to ring up, I've got to use an email. Students are much more able to use social media, and certainly with us, social media, you can ask questions on social media just like you can through the traditional means, and we are quite happy to accept questions at any point during the process between now and starting in September. Any university will be the same. Just ring them up if you're unsure, if you've got questions and you're not attending an open day or an offer holder day or anything like that, they will be willing to help. So I hope that's given you what should be quite a thorough understanding of what's going on and what you need to be aware of as parents and guardians in supporting your students in that transition into university. It is an exciting time for them. And quite often, because of that excitement and everything else that's going on at school or college, they tend to forget things. So it is really, really useful if you're there as that backup, just to help and guide them through it. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Gareth. That was really, really helpful, and it was really interesting to listen to all of that fantastic advice for our parents and students, and I'm sure that it's been incredibly useful, certainly for our year 13s who are, already applying and going through that whole situation with getting their choices in, their options, and deciding on their phone insurance choices and all of those practical aspects, but also for our year 12s, because we do have some year 12s online as well, just for that pre-planning and that understanding of what they need to go through next year too. So that's been incredibly useful. So thank you so much. Just to all of our attendees, if you do want to put anything in the chat, please feel free, and we'll put those to Gareth now. Whilst we just wait to see if anybody does input anything into the chat. We did have a couple of pre-submitted questions. One of them was just a more general question, really, about EPQ. I don't know if you've got any thoughts
EPQs, yes.
Just whether it adds weight to the UCAS application and what your thoughts on it really.
It will normally add weight in one of two ways. Now, the EPQ, certainly for us, at the University of Lincoln, it adds weight in both ways. One is some universities will consider the EPQ as an additional qualification. For us, the only course that we don't is medicine. For all other courses, we will definitely, because we are UCAS points driven rather than grade driven, consider the EPQ to make up potentially any shortfall. So I would always say to students, if you've got an EPQ, you know what the grades are or predicted grades are, put it down in your qualification section.
Yeah.
The other part of it is in your personal statement. It shows already to universities students who are starting to think outside of the box, starting to be self-reliant, starting to do independent reading and research. The ideal sort of student that most universities, in fact all universities, are looking for. What I would say though is what we tend to find with students who write about it in their personal statement is a lot of times they tell us what they're doing, what they're enjoying about it, but not what they're finding out or potentially what they hope to find out about it, the outcome. So we get the first bit, but we don't get the last bit. What we would like is that last bit as well.
Yeah, that sounds, and that resonates with a lot of other universities that you know, we as a team come across too, is that it can add that real depth to a personal statement where you can talk very much about the content of your EPQ and what you're taking from that. So that's great. Thank you for your thoughts on that, Gareth. And just one other question we had was, and you have already touched on this, I'd like to know a little bit more about how clearing works. This came from a parent. If a student doesn't get the grades for one or both choices, and how does it work with accommodation, given that you would have already applied for accommodation at the first choice? So is it a free for all?
In terms of clearing, hopefully it's explained. I explained it a little bit more thoroughly in that there are two parts to clearing. You can either go down the traditional route of clearing itself, where you do all the legwork and you contact the universities to find out if they've got any places available, talk to our advisor. That advisor will give you potentially a verbal offer, and then that university will confirm that with an email, normally shortly afterwards. Or you can use Clearing Plus, which is the more automated system where it tries to match you clearing with the courses that you've already applied for, and so you can hit the button and it goes off. In terms of accommodation, now it is very much a mixed bag. By this point, some universities like us, we can guarantee, and we will guarantee, students accommodation in halls of residence, because we have a surplus in that we have an awful lot of it. So as long as our students apply by the 1st of September for accommodation, we can guarantee it. Other universities aren't quite in that situation, but in that instance, then those universities should be making it quite clear from the outset that they haven't got any accommodation available, and it would be up to the student to find that accommodation. But that could be shared housing that's local with students that are already studying there. So it's not the end of the world.
And I think that's an important point, isn't it? That I think, as you mentioned earlier in your presentation, it's to go through clearing with quite a rational sort of process.
Always have a plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always have a plan.
Yeah.
So certainly, because clearing doesn't start until it starts on the 5th of July, UCAS and lots of other sites will have all the courses that are available to students from all the universities. So start to look at universities with similar sort of grade boundaries to the courses that you were interested in, but also being aware, are they too far away? It's a closer option, that might be one. What are they looking for? So have contact numbers and details down so that as a student, and a parent, you have a plan ready for results day. Hopefully, fingers crossed, you don't need that plan. And everything goes according to the student's firm or insurance choice. But it is always good to have that backup.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. And trying to consider those very practical things, you know, beforehand can take a little bit of that panic out of the situation on results day. And bear in mind, actually, that the vast majority of people going through clearing aren't those that have got less, you know, lower grades than what was expected. It's that, as you mentioned, it's the change of mind. It's students who have got better than expected. There's a lot of different scenarios involved on results day.
I've been doing this job for a long time, and when I first started doing this, clearing literally was for those that basically bombed out. Clearing has now become a lot more savvy, and there are twice as many people use clearing now as they did 15 years ago. Also have an email, a message in the chat from what if your application, if you've applied and been accepted? Okay, so if you decide to defer, then what I would say is contact your university to make sure they'd be happy to accept you for deferral. And normally they will need that in writing from you if they are, because some courses they won't accept, because there are a couple of courses that we will not accept deferrals onto. And if they want confirmation, which is normally an email, and the reason they do it as a hard copy is basically you will be able to put your UCAS ID in, which confirms it is genuine and it is you making that application for a deferral. What the university will do is hold your place. In that instance, your student finance and your accommodation would then be next year. So if you've applied for accommodation for this year and already been given a place, you would then contact the university to say, no, sorry, I've decided to defer. You can release that accommodation for somebody else. Equally, student finance, as long as you don't activate that student finance application on enrolment, nothing will happen to it. Okay, so if you're going to defer for a year, basically nothing will happen, and what student finance will eventually do is contact you to say, we've noticed you've not actually activated your finance. Do you wish to proceed with it for this year? You just answer no, and then you apply again next year.
Reapply, absolutely, until you go and enroll on that day. You're free to do that, aren't you, which is really good. We've had another question come in. Part-time jobs, how many hours of study are expected per week, and would the student have time for part-time work?
There are some courses where it is more difficult to fit in a part-time role, and I'm thinking nursing, midwifery, paramedics, as much as anything, simply because of the placements. That's another reason why the government gives them that additional money through the NHS Learning Support Fund. But for the vast majority of students, they have that flexibility in their timetable. Yes, they may have normally, certainly at Lincoln, between 12 and 15 hours of class contact a week, where somebody's actually stood in front of them teaching them, and we would then expect the students to do an additional 1 to 2 times the amount in self-directed study on top. But it's that flexibility, it's fitting it in. I can do it at weekends. Libraries at universities like Lincoln's is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so you could be in there over the weekend, early morning, late evening. So there is that ability to fit in a part-time job. And I do know that we have student ambassadors here that also have part-time jobs as well. So, you know, their income is double-fold in that instance. But it is certainly possible.
That's great, and it's learning to do that juggle, isn't it?
It is.
Between the study and the
Yeah.
part-time work.
And
Absolutely.
it's building one of those essential transferable skills that
Mhm.
employers look for, which is effective time management.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's been so helpful, Gareth. We don't seem to have any more questions come in, and we're just almost perfectly on time. So we'll start to wrap that up. But thank you so much. I think that's
No
been so
problem
useful
whatsoever.
for our students and parents. And as I said earlier, we'll have the recording to circulate afterwards. And if anybody does think of any questions that they haven't put in today, they can always email them to us at the careers@kids.ac.uk email address, and we'll deal with that. And if there's nothing that we can answer, then we'll perhaps ask Gareth for his expertise.
Yeah, quite happy to do that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Gareth. And if you do have a copy of your slides, perhaps we could circulate those as well with the recording afterwards. That
Yep,
would be really helpful.
I can send those over.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining us this evening, and I hope that everybody has a good night. It's still quite sunny, so that's all good. So thank you again. Bye bye.